Chapter 1. The world mirrors your mind. The life you experience each day does not begin with the events around you. It begins with the beliefs you carry within you. This simple idea sits at the heart of what Reverend Ike consistently taught throughout his public ministry. While many people spend their lives trying to change their circumstances first, he urges listeners to begin somewhere far less visible, the mind. According to Reverend Ike's philosophy, the outer world is often a reflection of the inner world. This does not mean that every event in life is personally chosen or deserved, nor does it mean that difficult experiences should be ignored or explained away. Rather, one of the recurring themes in his public teachings was that the way a person consistently thinks about themselves, interprets the world, and expects life to unfold profoundly influences the choices they make, the opportunities they notice, and the direction their lives gradually take. To many people, this idea sounds almost too simple. After all, if changing your thinking were enough, wouldn't everyone be wealthy, healthy, and successful? Reverend Ike never presented the mind as a magic wand. Instead, he emphasized that the mind is the starting point. Thoughts influence beliefs. Beliefs influence decisions. Decisions become repeated actions, and repeated actions shape the course of a life. Think about two people who lose their jobs on the same day. They face the same event, yet their responses may be completely different. One immediately concludes, "Nothing ever works out for me." The other says, "This is difficult, but perhaps this is also the beginning of something better." The circumstances are identical. The interpretations are not. Over the following weeks, those interpretations begin influencing behavior. One person withdraws, hesitates to apply for new opportunities, and expects rejection before it arrives. The other updates to resume, learns new skills, reaches out to contacts, and continues moving despite uncertainty. Eventually, their paths may look completely different. Reverend Ike taught that this difference begins long before the results become visible. It begins in the unseen world of thought. A recurring theme in his public teachings was that many people unknowingly live from inherited beliefs rather than consciously chosen ones. Families, schools, communities, disappointments, and repeated experiences quietly shape the stories people tell themselves. Some grow up believing there is never enough. Others come to believe that success belongs only to a fortunate few. Still others convince themselves they are simply not the type of person who prospers. Once these beliefs settle into mind, they begin operating almost automatically. People stop questioning them because they feel true. Yet according to Reverend Ike's philosophy, feeling true and being true are not always the same thing. An old belief repeated often enough can become so familiar that it disguises itself as reality. Modern psychology offers an interesting perspective that complements this idea. Researchers describe cognitive schemas as deeply rooted mental frameworks that shape how we interpret new information. Two people can observe the same situation while arriving at entirely different conclusions because their minds filter reality through different expectations. This does not prove every spiritual claim Reverend Ike made, but it does illustrate how deeply beliefs influence perception and behavior. He frequently emphasized the importance of examining those hidden beliefs instead of assuming they were permanent facts. If someone continually thinks of themselves as incapable, they often notice evidence that confirms that belief while overlooking evidence that challenges it. In psychology, this resembles what is known as confirmation bias, the tendency to notice information that supports existing expectations. The important lesson is not that the world changes instantly because you think differently. The lesson is that thinking differently changes how you participate in the world. New beliefs create new actions create new experiences, and those experiences gradually reinforce a different identity. This is why Reverend Ike placed such importance on the mind before circumstances. Many people become trapped in a cycle of waiting. They tell themselves they will become confident after they succeed, grateful after they become wealthy, peaceful after every problem disappears. According to Reverend Ike's philosophy, this order is reversed. Inner transformation comes first. External change often follows because the person begins acting from a different place. That distinction is easy to misunderstand. Some critics assume that teachings about prosperity encourage people to deny reality or ignore hardship. Yet one of the central ideas in his message was not the denial of problems, but the refusal to let problems define personal identity. A financial setback does not have to become the story of who you are. A season of disappointment does not have to become your permanent expectation for the future. This way of thinking invites responsibility rather than blame. Responsibility asks, given where I am today, what beliefs are helping me move forward, and which ones are quietly holding me back? That question shifts attention from helplessness to possibility. It recognizes that while not every circumstance is within your control, your response remains one of your greatest sources of influence. Consider how this applies beyond money. A person convinced they cannot build meaningful relationships may unknowingly avoid vulnerability, misinterpret kindness, or expect rejection before giving trust a chance. Someone who believes they are incapable of learning may avoid challenges altogether, reinforcing the belief they hope to escape. In each case, the inner story quietly shapes the outer experience. Reverend Ike repeatedly encouraged people to become aware of those inner stories, because awareness creates the opportunity for change. You cannot replace a belief you refuse to examine. Many limiting ideas remain hidden simply because they have been repeated for years without question. This is where thoughtful self-reflection becomes valuable. Ask yourself, what assumptions guide my daily decisions? What do I expect when I pursue a new opportunity? What words do I quietly repeat about myself when no one else is listening? These questions are not exercises in self-criticism. They are invitations to greater self-awareness. Changing deeply rooted beliefs is rarely immediate. The brain prefers familiarity, even when familiarity is limiting. Habits of thought strengthen through repetition, just as habits of behavior do. Replacing them requires patience, consistency, and deliberate attention. Reverend Ike taught that prosperity consciousness develops over time through repeated mental discipline rather than occasional bursts of inspiration. That perspective aligns with what behavioral science tells us about habit formation. Lasting change usually emerges through repeated practice rather than dramatic moments. New ways of thinking gradually become more natural as they are reinforced by repeated choices and lived experience. Perhaps the greatest insight from this chapter is that your life is influenced not only by what happens to you, but also by the meaning you consistently assign to what happens. Meaning directs emotion. Emotion influences behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. Whether viewed through the lens of Reverend Ike's philosophy or through modern psychology, the inner world deserves far more attention than most people give it. This does not mean every dream will unfold exactly as planned. It does not promise instant prosperity or guarantee success. Life remains uncertain, and every person encounters obstacles beyond their control. Yet according to Reverend Ike's teachings, cultivating a healthier, more abundant mindset places you in a stronger position to respond creatively, act courageously, and remain open to possibilities that fear might otherwise conceal. The world you experience tomorrow begins with the conversations taking place in your mind today. Those conversations become beliefs. Those beliefs become decisions, and those decisions quietly shape the future that eventually arrives. In the next chapter, we will explore one of the ideas Reverend Ike returned to again and again, the remarkable influence of self-image. Before a person changes their income, career, relationships, or achievements, they often must first change the picture they hold of themselves. Understanding that invisible picture may explain why lasting success feels effortless for some people and endlessly out of reach for others. Chapter 2. The Invisible Prison of Self-Image. Long before success becomes visible, it is quietly accepted or rejected within the mind. Many people believe that the greatest obstacles in life are external. They point to the economy, their upbringing, their education, difficult people, or unfortunate circumstances. These challenges are real, and they deserve to be acknowledged. Yet beneath them often lies another influence that receives far less attention. The picture a person carries of themselves. That inner picture is what psychologists often call self-image. It is a collection of beliefs, assumptions, expectations, and emotional conclusions that answer one silent question. Who am I? The answer to that question shapes countless decisions every day. Someone who believes they are capable approaches opportunity differently from someone who quietly believes they are destined to fail. The difference is rarely dramatic at first. It appears in small moments, applying for a position, introducing themselves to a stranger, negotiating a salary, starting a business, speaking up during a meeting, or continuing after a setback. Over months and years, Those small moments accumulate until they resemble destiny. One of the recurring themes in prosperity philosophy is that lasting external change usually follows a deeper internal transformation. Before people consistently earn differently, lead differently, or create differently, they often begin thinking differently about who they are capable of becoming. This does not mean confidence should ignore reality. Genuine confidence grows from learning, preparation, discipline, and experience. Yet those qualities flourish most naturally when a person believes growth is possible. Modern psychology offers an interesting perspective. Researchers describe self-concept as a powerful organizer of behavior. Human beings naturally seek consistency between what they believe about themselves and how they act. If someone believes they are unreliable, they may unconsciously repeat behaviors that reinforce that identity. If they begin viewing themselves as disciplined, they become more likely to make decisions that support that new identity. In other words, identity often leads behavior more than behavior creates identity. This helps explain why temporary motivation frequently fades. Motivation can inspire action for a day. Identity influences action for years. Hidden beliefs are especially powerful because they rarely announce themselves. They operate quietly. A person might sincerely say they want financial stability, while secretly believing wealth belongs only to people who were born into privilege. Another may dream of starting a company while carrying an unexamined belief that failure would make them unworthy of respect. Others hesitate to pursue meaningful relationships because they have accepted the belief that rejection is inevitable. None of these conclusions are visible to the outside world, yet they influence hundreds of decisions. These hidden assumptions become invisible walls. The encouraging news is that invisible walls are not permanent structures. They are patterns of thought, and patterns can change. Changing them, however, requires honesty. It requires asking difficult questions. What story have I repeated about myself for years? Where did that story begin? Does evidence truly support it? Or have I mistaken familiarity for truth? These questions are uncomfortable because they invite responsibility without demanding self-condemnation. They recognize that many beliefs were inherited rather than intentionally chosen. Children absorb messages from families, schools, communities, media, and culture long before they possess the maturity to evaluate them critically. Some messages encourage resilience and curiosity. Others quietly communicate limitations. Those early impressions do not have to determine the future. Adults possess something children often lack: the ability to examine, challenge, and replace beliefs. That process is neither quick nor effortless. The brain favors familiar patterns because familiarity conserves mental energy. Repeated thoughts strengthen neural pathways over time, making old beliefs feel automatic. Creating healthier patterns requires repetition, reflection, and consistent action. Fortunately, every deliberate choice weakens an old pattern while strengthening a new one. Consider someone learning to see themselves as financially responsible. They begin budgeting. They learn new skills. They save consistently. They become more intentional about spending. Each action reinforces a new identity. Eventually, the statement, "I am becoming someone who manages money wisely," feels increasingly natural because behavior and belief begin supporting one another. The same principle extends beyond finances. A student who starts identifying as a lifelong learner studies differently. A leader who views themselves as someone capable of serving others communicates differently. A person recovering from repeated disappointment approaches new opportunities differently once they stop defining themselves by past outcomes. Identity quietly influences attention. Attention influences behavior. Behavior influences results. Results reinforce identity. Understanding this cycle provides an opportunity to interrupt it consciously. This is why self-reflection is not an exercise in endless introspection. It is practical. Take a notebook. Write the beliefs you repeat most often. I am always behind. I am not creative. I never finish what I start. I am bad with money. Then ask whether those statements describe your permanent identity or simply your previous experiences. Experiences are real. They deserve to be learned from. They do not always deserve to become lifelong labels. Healthy self-image also differs from arrogance. Arrogance exaggerates ability while resisting correction. A healthy self-image combines confidence with humility. It welcomes growth because it no longer fears discovering weaknesses. Ironically, people with the healthiest confidence often continue learning because their identity is rooted in progress rather than perfection. Prosperity, viewed broadly, follows a similar pattern. It is not merely the accumulation of possessions. It includes wisdom, generosity, meaningful work, healthy relationships, emotional resilience, and responsible stewardship of resources. A prosperous self-image therefore extends beyond income. It asks, do I see myself as someone capable of contributing value? Do I believe my efforts can improve with learning? Do I approach opportunities expecting only failure or prepared for growth? Those questions influence daily behavior far more than occasional motivational speeches. Changing self-image also requires patience. Years of conditioning rarely disappear overnight. Some days old beliefs return with surprising strength. That does not mean progress has failed. It simply means the mind continues choosing between familiar patterns and healthier ones. Growth often looks less like a straight line and more like a gradual upward path with occasional setbacks. Every setback becomes another opportunity to reinforce a different identity. Instead of saying, I fail because I am incapable, you begin asking, what can this experience teach me? That single shift transforms failure from a verdict into information. Over time, the entire relationship with success changes. Success is no longer something that proves your worth. It becomes something that grows naturally from continued learning, wise decisions, and faithful effort. Perhaps the greatest prison is not one built from steel. It is one built from unquestioned assumptions. Fortunately, the key has been available all along. Awareness unlocks examination. Examination makes change possible. Repeated action strengthens new beliefs. New beliefs gradually produce new habits. And new habits slowly reshape a life. In the next chapter, we will explore another central idea found throughout prosperity philosophy: the difference between living with a mindset of scarcity and cultivating an outlook of abundance, and why that distinction influences far more than money alone. Chapter 3. Prosperity is a state of consciousness. Prosperity begins long before it can be measured. It first appears as a way of thinking, a way of interpreting the world, and a way of responding to opportunity. Long before a bank account changes, a career advances, or a dream becomes reality, something often changes within the individual, a new understanding of what is possible. Many philosophies of personal development share the idea that external success is influenced by internal beliefs. While they differ in their spiritual and philosophical foundations, they often agree on one important principle. People tend to move in the direction of the expectations they consistently reinforce through thought and action. This idea invites an important question. What does it really mean to think with a prosperous mind? A prosperous mindset is not blind optimism. It is not pretending problems do not exist, nor is it believing that positive thinking alone guarantees wealth or success. Instead, it is a habit of approaching life from possibility rather than permanent limitation. Consider two entrepreneurs launching similar businesses. Both face uncertainty, setbacks, and rejection. One interprets every obstacle as proof that success is impossible. The other views those same obstacles as information, adjusting, learning, and continuing to improve. Neither person controls every circumstance, but each interprets those circumstances differently. Over time, those interpretations influence persistence, creativity, and resilience. This illustrates the difference between scarcity thinking and abundance thinking. Scarcity thinking assumes there is never enough. There is never enough opportunity, enough recognition, enough money, enough talent, or enough time. Because of this assumption, every success achieved by another person feels like a personal loss. Abundance thinking approaches the world differently. It recognizes that resources may be limited in some situations, but human creativity, learning, collaboration, and growth continually create new possibilities. It encourages asking better questions, developing new skills, and looking for solutions rather than remaining fixed on obstacles. Modern psychology offers useful insight here. Research on growth mindset suggests that people who believe abilities can improve through learning and effort are more likely to persevere after setbacks than those who believe abilities are fixed. This does not mean effort guarantees success, but it often changes how people respond to challenges. Prosperity, viewed through this broader lens, becomes much more than money. Financial stability is valuable. It provides choices, security, and opportunities. Yet many people possess considerable wealth while lacking peace, meaningful relationships, integrity, or purpose. Others have modest incomes, yet display remarkable generosity, wisdom, resilience, and fulfillment. True prosperity, therefore, includes several dimensions. There's intellectual prosperity, the willingness to keep learning. There is emotional prosperity, the ability to remain steady during difficulty. There's relational prosperity, building trust, kindness, and mutual respect. There's physical prosperity, caring responsibly for health. There's financial prosperity, managing resources wisely and creating value. These forms of prosperity often strengthen one another. Someone committed to lifelong learning becomes better equipped to solve problems. Someone who develops emotional resilience recovers more quickly from disappointment. Someone who earns trust often creates stronger professional and personal opportunities. Notice how each begins with habits of thought before becoming visible in behavior. This is why self-awareness matters so deeply. Many limiting beliefs operate quietly beneath conscious attention. A person may repeatedly postpone applying for promotions because they assume they are unqualified. Another may avoid investing in education because they have concluded improvement is impossible. Someone else may refuse help because they believe accepting support signals weakness. These conclusions shape decisions long before external results appear. Fortunately, beliefs are not fixed. They can be examined. A practical exercise is to write down recurring thoughts whenever you face an important decision. Are they based on evidence, or are they echoes of old assumptions? Do they encourage thoughtful action, or do they reinforce fear? Simply noticing these patterns often creates the first opportunity for change. Building a prosperous mindset also requires action. New beliefs become convincing when they're supported by repeated behavior. Reading, practicing, budgeting, learning, exercising, communicating honestly, and serving others all reinforce a healthier view of yourself and your future. This process is gradual. Lasting change rarely arrives through one inspiring moment. It grows through consistent choices repeated over weeks, months, and years. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about prosperity is that it belongs only to extraordinary people. In reality, many meaningful achievements begin with ordinary individuals who repeatedly choose growth over resignation. They do not control every outcome, but they continually develop the qualities that increase their capacity to contribute and adapt. Prosperity, then, is less about chasing an image of success and more about becoming the kind of person who creates value, learns continuously, and responds wisely to life's changing circumstances. When viewed this way, prosperity is not a destination reached once and for all. It is an ongoing practice of developing character, expanding understanding, and making decisions that align with long-term purpose rather than short-term fear. As you continue listening, consider this question: what habits of thought encourage your growth, and which quietly limit it? The answer may reveal that the greatest opportunity for change lies not in changing the world around you first, but in changing the way you consistently engage with it. In the next chapter, we will explore how inner dialogue influences perception, confidence, and daily decision-making, and why the conversations you have with yourself often become the foundation for the life you gradually build. Chapter 4. Your words become your reality. The conversations that shape your future are rarely the ones you have with other people. They are the quiet conversations that happen within your own mind every single day. Long before a decision is made, an opportunity is accepted, or a challenge is overcome, an inner voice begins interpreting the situation. Sometimes it encourages action. Sometimes it whispers doubt. Sometimes it reminds you of previous failures. Other times it quietly suggests that growth is possible. This inner dialogue is one of the most powerful influences on human behavior. Many traditions in personal development have emphasized the importance of paying attention to the words we repeat to ourselves. Although they explain this principle in different ways, they often arrive at a similar conclusion. Repeated thoughts gradually become beliefs, and beliefs influence the choices we make. That does not mean words possess magical power on their own. Simply repeating a sentence cannot erase every obstacle or guarantee success. Yet words matter because they shape attention, expectation, and emotional response. They influence what we notice, what we attempt, and how we recover after setbacks. Think about the difference between these two internal responses after making a mistake. I always ruin everything. Or, I made a mistake, but I can learn from it. The event is identical. The interpretation is completely different. The first statement labels the entire person. The second evaluates a single experience. Over time, those two habits of thinking create very different lives. Modern psychology helps explain why. The brain continually processes enormous amount of information, filtering what deserves attention. Self-talk becomes part of that filter. If someone constantly tells themselves they are incapable, they become more likely to notice evidence supporting that belief while overlooking examples of competence and progress. This is closely related to confirmation bias and expectancy effects. People naturally seek consistency between what they believe and what they perceive. For this reason, becoming aware of your internal language is not merely positive thinking. It is a practical exercise in understanding how beliefs influence perception. Constructive inner dialogue is also different from denial. Suppose someone is struggling financially. Ignoring unpaid bills and repeating, "Everything is perfect," does little to solve the problem. A healthier approach is to acknowledge reality while refusing to let reality define identity. I have financial challenges today, but I can improve my knowledge, manage my resources wisely, and make better decisions. Notice the difference. The facts remain unchanged. The attitude toward the future changes completely. This distinction matters because hope without action becomes wishful thinking, while action without hope often fades into discouragement. Healthy inner dialogue brings the two together. It encourages realistic optimism. Another concept often discussed in personal development is the use of affirmations. Affirmations are simply intentional statements designed to reinforce healthier patterns of thinking. Their effectiveness does not come from repeating words mechanically. Rather, they become useful when they remind us of values we are actively working toward. An affirmation such as, "I am becoming more disciplined each day," gains meaning when it is accompanied by consistent effort. Each completed task reinforces a statement. Each repeated action strengthens the identity behind it. Without action, affirmations become empty slogans. With action, they become reminders of the person you are intentionally becoming. Behavioral science supports this broader principle. Habits grow stronger through repetition. Identity becomes more convincing when thoughts and actions align. When you repeatedly keep promises to yourself, confidence gradually develops, not because you declared yourself confident, but because your experience begins supporting that belief. Language also shapes relationships. Someone who constantly expects conflict may speak defensively before disagreement even arises. Someone who expects cooperation often communicates more openly and listens more carefully. The words spoken internally influence the tone of words spoken aloud. This is another reason paying attention to self-talk matters. It reaches far beyond individual motivation. It influences how we work, lead, learn, forgive, and collaborate. One practical exercise is to observe recurring phrases for a week. Write them down exactly as they appear. "I'll never figure this out." "I'm too old." "I'm not creative." "I always fail." Then ask, are these facts, or are they habits of thought? Many people discover that the harshest critic in their lives has quietly been their own internal voice. Replacing that voice does not require pretending perfection already exists. It requires choosing language that encourages growth rather than permanent limitation. Instead of, "I can't do this," try, "I can't do this yet, but I can improve." Instead of, "I'm terrible with money," try, "I'm learning to manage money more wisely." Small changes in wording often create significant changes in attitude because they shift identity from fixed limitation toward continuous development. This perspective also encourages compassion. Every person carries internal conversations shaped by family, culture, education, and past experiences. Some inherited encouraging voices, others inherited fear. Recognizing this reality allows us to approach ourselves and others with greater patience while still taking responsibility for personal growth. Ultimately, your words do not control the world around you. They do, however, influence the world within you. And that inner world shapes the decisions, habits, and relationships that gradually build a life. The most valuable conversation you may ever improve is the one no one else can hear. As this journey continues, we will explore another important dimension of prosperity thinking: the role of expectation, confidence, and disciplined action in shaping how people respond to opportunity and uncertainty. Understanding that relationship helps explain why mindset and behavior are most powerful when they work together rather than apart. Chapter 5. Faith is mental expectation. The future is often shaped long before it arrives, not because anyone can predict it with certainty, but because people begin living according to what they sincerely expect. Every meaningful achievement begins with uncertainty. No entrepreneur knows exactly how a business will develop. No student knows with complete confidence that years of study will lead to the desired career. No artist can guarantee that their work will be appreciated. Yet people continue moving forward because they possess something more powerful than certainty. They possess expectations. Expectation is different from wishful thinking. Wishing waits. Expectation prepares. One dreams about a better future while remaining unchanged. The other begins making decisions today that reflect confidence in tomorrow. Many traditions of personal growth describe faith in this practical sense. Rather than viewing faith as passive hope, they present it as an inner confidence that encourages purposeful action despite uncertainty. Faith becomes less about predicting outcomes and more about choosing a direction worthy of consistent effort. This distinction matters because uncertainty is part of every meaningful journey. Waiting until every question is answered often means waiting forever. The individual who starts learning a language, building a career, improving their health, or launching a new project rarely possesses complete confidence. They simply possess enough belief to take the next step. That first step changes everything. Action creates experience. Experience creates knowledge. Knowledge strengthens confidence. Confidence encourages further action. The cycle continues. Modern psychology provides an interesting perspective on this process. Researchers have long observed that expectations influence behavior in subtle but important ways. When people believe improvement is possible, they tend to persist longer, notice opportunities more readily, and recover more effectively after setbacks. Their expectations do not magically alter reality, but they influence how they engage with reality. Consider two people beginning the same course of study. One quietly believes, "I'll probably fail." The other says, "This will be difficult, but I believe I can learn." Neither statement changes the curriculum. Both students receive the same assignments. Yet their expectations influence how they respond when the first challenge appears. The student expecting failure may interpret one poor result as confirmation that success is impossible. The student expecting growth may interpret the same result as feedback about what requires more practice. Expectation changes interpretation. Interpretation changes behavior. Behavior changes long-term outcomes. This helps explain why confidence is valuable, but also reveals why confidence must be grounded in action rather than fantasy. Healthy confidence says, "I may not know everything today, but I am capable of learning." Unhealthy confidence says, "I will succeed without preparation." The first encourages discipline. The second encourages complacency. The difference is profound. Faith, understood as confident expectation, does not remove the need for work. Instead, it gives work direction and endurance. History offers countless examples of people who continued despite uncertainty. Scientists performed experiments that failed repeatedly before discovering solutions. Athletes trained for years without public recognition. Musicians practiced in empty rooms before performing for audiences. Their progress depended not on certainty, but on the willingness to continue acting before results became visible. This principle applies equally to everyday life. Someone rebuilding their finances begins budgeting before wealth appears. Someone strengthening relationships begins communicating differently before trust is fully restored. Someone pursuing better health develops healthier routines before dramatic physical changes occur. The visible results arrive later. The invisible commitment comes first. There is another side to expectation that deserves attention. Negative expectations also influence behavior. If a person repeatedly expects rejection, they may avoid conversations that could have become valuable friendships. If someone expects every opportunity to end in disappointment, they may stop recognizing opportunities altogether. Fear often narrows attention. Hope expands it. Neither guarantees an outcome. Both influence the willingness to engage. For this reason, becoming aware of your expectations is an important exercise. Ask yourself, when I face a challenge, what do I quietly assume will happen? Do I expect growth? Or do I automatically predict failure? Am I preparing for opportunity or preparing to confirm old fears? These questions are not intended to produce guilt. They are invitations to awareness. Awareness creates choice. Choice creates change. Constructive expectation also requires flexibility. Life will not always unfold according to our plans. Goals change. Circumstances change. Unexpected setbacks occur. Healthy confidence is not destroyed by these realities because it is rooted in adaptability rather than rigid certainty. Instead of asking, "Why did everything go wrong?" a resilient person often asks, "What can I learn from this experience?" That question preserves hope while remaining honest about difficulty. It transforms obstacles into teachers instead of permanent definitions. Behavioral science supports this perspective. People who adopt a learning orientation often recover more effectively from disappointment because they interpret setbacks as information rather than evidence of personal inadequacy. Faith, viewed in this practical way, becomes closely connected to resilience. It encourages continuing when progress is slow. It encourages preparation before opportunity arrives. It encourages responsibility rather than resignation. Most importantly, it reminds us that meaningful progress usually begins internally before becoming externally visible. The first visible change may be a new habit, then a new skill, then improved judgment, then stronger relationships. Eventually, those small changes accumulate into larger transformations that appear obvious only in hindsight. This process is rarely dramatic. It is usually quiet. One thoughtful decision, followed by another. One disciplined action, followed by another. One encouraging thought replacing one limiting assumption. Repeated often enough, those moments begin changing the direction of a life. Faith, then, is not the absence of questions. It is the willingness to continue moving while questions remain. It is confidence combined with preparation, hope joined with responsibility, vision joined with consistent effort. As we continue this journey, we will explore another important challenge that often prevents progress: the hidden ways people unintentionally resist the very success they say they desire, and how greater self-awareness can help break those patterns. Chapter 6. Why most people push success away. Success is often described as something people desperately pursue, yet human behavior tells a more complicated story. Beneath many ambitions lies an invisible resistance that quietly pulls people back toward what feels familiar. It is not always laziness. It is not always a lack of intelligence or opportunity. Sometimes the greatest obstacle is the discomfort that meaningful change creates. When people picture success, they usually imagine its rewards. They think about greater freedom, improved finances, stronger relationships, or the satisfaction of reaching an important goal. What they often overlook is that every significant achievement asks for something in return. It asks for greater responsibility, different habits, new expectations, and the willingness to leave familiar patterns behind. That transition can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. The human brain is designed to conserve energy and reduce uncertainty. Familiar routines, even unhelpful ones, require less mental effort than creating new ones. This tendency helps explain why lasting change is often difficult. A familiar problem can feel psychologically safer than an unfamiliar opportunity. This is sometimes described as the comfort zone. The comfort zone is not necessarily comfortable. It is simply predictable. People remain in situations they dislike because those situations are known. The unknown, even when it offers growth, often produces anxiety. Understanding this principle changes how we think about success. Many people do not fail because they lack potential. They struggle because growth asks them to become someone they have never been before. One common form of resistance is the fear of responsibility. Responsibility expands with every new opportunity. A promotion brings greater influence, but also greater accountability. Starting a business creates freedom, but it also requires decision-making, financial planning, and resilience. Becoming a respected leader means accepting criticism alongside appreciation. When viewed from a distance, success appears attractive. When viewed up close, it often demands discipline. For this reason, some people unconsciously avoid opportunities that will require them to grow. They postpone important decisions, delay preparation, or convince themselves the timing is never quite right. The explanation is not always obvious because these choices rarely feel like fear. They often appear reasonable in the moment. I'll wait until I know a little more. I'll start next month. I'll apply when I'm completely ready. Preparation is valuable. Endless preparation can become avoidance. Growth almost always begins before complete confidence arrives. Another invisible barrier is the fear of change itself. Change alters routines, relationships, and identity. As people develop new priorities, they sometimes discover that old habits no longer fit. Friends may not understand the changes. Daily schedules evolve. Personal expectations increase. Even positive change requires adjustment. This explains why major life transitions often feel emotionally demanding. Graduating, changing careers, moving to a new city, becoming a parent, or launching a business all involve letting go of familiar versions of ourselves. Psychologists describe this process as adaptation. Human beings naturally seek psychological stability. New environments temporarily disrupt that stability until fresh routines become established. Recognizing this process makes discomfort easier to understand. Feeling uncertain during growth does not necessarily mean you are moving in the wrong direction. It may simply mean your mind is adapting to new possibilities. A third obstacle is the fear of being judged. People often underestimate how strongly social expectations influence behavior. We are social beings. Acceptance matters. Throughout history, belonging to a community increased survival. Although modern life has changed dramatically, the desire for acceptance remains deeply rooted. As a result, people sometimes avoid pursuing meaningful goals because success changes how others perceive them. Someone who begins exercising consistently may worry about appearing different from friends. Someone returning to university later in life may fear being considered too old. Someone starting a business may hesitate because failure will become visible. Ironically, success and failure can both attract criticism. Some people criticize those who attempt ambitious goals. Others criticize those who achieve them. Waiting for universal approval, therefore, becomes an impossible standard. Developing emotional resilience means accepting that thoughtful decisions should be guided primarily by values rather than by the shifting opinions of everyone around us. This does not encourage arrogance or indifference. Constructive feedback remains valuable. Wise counsel helps us improve. The challenge is learning to distinguish between helpful guidance and the fear of disappointing people who expect us to remain unchanged. Perhaps the most subtle barrier is subconscious familiarity. Human beings tend to repeat patterns that feel emotionally familiar, even when those patterns are unhelpful. A person raised in constant financial anxiety may unconsciously believe stability is temporary. Someone accustomed to criticism may struggle to accept genuine encouragement. Another individual who has experienced repeated disappointment may hesitate to celebrate progress because they expect it to disappear. These reactions are understandable. They develop over years of repeated experiences. Fortunately, they are not permanent. Awareness creates the opportunity to respond differently. Instead of asking, "Why do I keep failing?" a more useful question may be, "What familiar pattern am I repeating?" That question shifts attention from self-condemnation toward curiosity. Curiosity opens the door to learning. Learning creates choice. Choice creates change. Modern behavioral science supports the importance of repeated practice in reshaping habits. Small, consistent actions often produce more lasting change than dramatic bursts of motivation. Someone who wants to become financially responsible begins with simple habits, such as tracking expenses, creating realistic goals, and learning continuously. Someone wishing to become healthier focuses on sustainable routines rather than temporary extremes. Someone hoping to become more confident keeps small promises to themselves until trust gradually develops. Each repeated action sends a quiet message to the mind. This is who I am becoming. Identity grows stronger when behavior and belief begin supporting one another. This process also requires patience. progress is rarely linear. Old habits occasionally return. Unexpected setbacks occur. Temporary disappointment does not erase meaningful growth. Every day offers another opportunity to choose actions aligned with the future rather than the past. One helpful exercise is to notice moments when hesitation appears. Ask yourself, am I avoiding this because it is genuinely unwise or because it requires becoming more responsible? Am I protecting myself from real danger or from temporary discomfort? Those questions encourage honest reflection without demanding perfection. Ultimately, meaningful success is less about eliminating fear than learning to move wisely despite it. Fear may continue speaking. It does not have to make every decision. Responsibility may feel heavy. Growth may feel unfamiliar. Criticism may occasionally appear. Yet each step taken with intention gradually expands the boundaries of what feels possible. Over time, today's uncertainty becomes tomorrow's normal. The comfort zone grows larger. Confidence becomes quieter, steadier, and more deeply rooted, not because life becomes easier, but because experience repeatedly demonstrates that growth is possible. In the next chapter, we will turn our attention to another powerful influence on human behavior, the way attention shapes perception. We will explore why continually focusing on lack often reinforces discouragement, and how directing attention toward possibility, gratitude, and constructive action can gradually transform the way we engage with everyday life. Chapter 7. From Scarcity to Solutions. The mind naturally moves toward whatever it repeatedly observes, and what it repeatedly observes gradually begins to shape the way it understands the world. This simple fact explains why two people can face similar circumstances, yet experience them very differently. One notices obstacles almost everywhere they look. The other notices possibilities hidden within those same circumstances. Neither person is pretending that life is easy. The difference lies in where attention settles most often. Attention is one of the mind's most valuable resources. Where attention goes, emotion often follows. Where emotion settles, behavior usually follows. And over time, repeated behavior begins shaping the direction of a life. For this reason, many traditions of personal growth encourage people to become aware of their habitual focus. Not because problems should be ignored, but because problems can quietly become the center of a person's identity if they receive all of our mental energy. There's an important difference between solving a problem and living inside it. A person who acknowledges financial difficulty and creates a thoughtful budget is responding constructively. A person who spends every waking hour replaying fears without taking meaningful action often strengthens anxiety, while leaving the original problem unchanged. The same principle appears in many areas of life. A difficult conversation deserves attention. It does not deserve endless replay. A disappointing result deserves reflection. It does not deserve becoming your permanent definition. Healthy attention moves naturally from awareness to understanding to action. It does not become trapped in endless rumination. Modern psychology helps explain why. The human brain has a natural tendency to notice potential threats. This tendency, sometimes called a negativity bias, developed because recognizing danger helped our ancestors survive. As a result, disappointing events often leave a stronger emotional impression than positive ones. This tendency is not a flaw. It is part of being human. The challenge is that our brains sometimes continue searching for danger long after it has become unhelpful. When every setback receives prolonged attention, the mind begins expecting disappointment even in situations that deserve curiosity or hope. Awareness allows us to interrupt this pattern. Instead of asking, what else might go wrong? We can also ask, what is still within my control today? That question changes the direction of attention. It moves the mind from helplessness toward responsibility. Responsibility does not guarantee immediate success. It does create movement. Movement creates opportunity. Another valuable practice is gratitude. Gratitude is frequently misunderstood. Some people assume gratitude requires pretending everything is wonderful. It does not. Authentic gratitude never asks us to deny grief, disappointment, illness, financial pressure, or uncertainty. Instead, gratitude reminds us that difficult seasons rarely describe the whole picture. Even during challenging times, many people still possess relationships worth protecting, lessons worth learning, strengths worth developing, or opportunities worth exploring. Recognizing these realities does not erase hardship. It simply broadens perspective. Research in positive psychology suggests that regularly reflecting on meaningful aspects of life can improve emotional well-being and resilience for many people. Gratitude is not presented as a cure for every difficulty, but often helps people maintain balance during periods of stress. This is why gratitude and action work well together. Gratitude appreciates what already exists. Action improves what can still grow. Neither replaces the other. Together, they encourage a healthier relationship with life. Consider someone searching for employment. One approach is to spend every day repeating, "There are no opportunities." Another approach is to acknowledge the challenge while asking, "What skill could I improve this week? Who could I contact? What can I learn that increases my value?" The circumstances may not change overnight. The person changes immediately. Their attention shifts toward possibility. That shift influences behavior. Behavior gradually influences results. Notice that this perspective is practical rather than magical. It does not promise that every effort succeeds. It encourages directing energy toward choices that increase the likelihood of meaningful progress. This same principle applies to relationships. When attention rests exclusively on another person's shortcomings, appreciation gradually disappears. When attention includes strengths as well as challenges, communication often becomes more balanced and compassionate. Again, this is not denial. Serious problems should be addressed honestly. Constructive attention simply refuses to let one difficulty become the entire story. One helpful exercise is to notice recurring mental habits throughout the day. Whenever you catch yourself replaying the same worry repeatedly, pause for a moment. Ask, is this thought helping me solve the problem? Or is it simply repeating the problem? If it is only repeating the problem, redirect attention toward one practical step. Make the phone call. Read the chapter. Take the walk. Write the plan. Begin the conversation. Small actions interrupt cycles of helplessness. Over time, they also strengthen confidence. Confidence often grows less from extraordinary victories than from repeated evidence that you can respond thoughtfully to life's challenges. This perspective also encourages generosity. Scarcity thinking tends to convince people that another person's success somehow reduces their own opportunities. A healthier outlook recognizes that cooperation, learning, creativity, and service frequently expand possibilities for everyone involved. Celebrating another person's progress does not diminish your own future. In many cases, it inspires it. This attitude creates healthier relationships, stronger communities, and greater openness to collaboration. It also protects us from comparison. Comparison quietly steals attention from the work that matters most. Someone will always appear wealthier, more experienced, more talented, or further ahead. Measuring your entire life against someone else's highlight moments rarely produces peace. A better comparison asks, am I becoming wiser than I was last year? Am I treating people with greater kindness? Am I making decisions more intentionally? Am I responding to setbacks with greater resilience? Those questions focus attention on growth rather than competition. Perhaps the greatest lesson in this chapter is that attention is a choice that deserves careful stewardship. You cannot always choose your circumstances. You can often choose what receives the majority of your mental energy. You can acknowledge hardship without allowing hardship to become your identity. You can appreciate today's blessings while working toward tomorrow's goals. You can recognize obstacles while remaining committed to finding solutions. This balance creates emotional steadiness. It encourages wisdom instead of denial, hope instead of helplessness, responsibility instead of resignation. As this journey continues, we will explore another important dimension of prosperity thinking, our relationship with money itself. We will consider why financial resources are best understood as tools rather than measures of personal worth, and how wise stewardship contributes to a life of genuine prosperity. Chapter 9. Opportunity begins in perception. The opportunities that change a person's life are often invisible to someone else standing in exactly the same place. Not because opportunity is unfairly distributed, but because perception quietly determines what the mind notices, values, and acts upon. Every day, countless possibilities pass unnoticed. A conversation that could become a partnership, a book that could reshape a career, a new skill that could open unexpected doors, a problem waiting for someone creative enough to solve it. Most people are surrounded by more possibilities than they realize, yet only a fraction ever receive their attention. This raises an important question. Why can two people experience the same situation and leave with completely different conclusions? Part of the answer lies in perception. Perception is more than eyesight. It is the mind's interpretation of reality. It is a collection of beliefs, expectations, memories, and assumptions through which every experience is filtered. Long before we consciously decide what something means, the brain has already begun interpreting it. This explains why one person sees a challenge, while another sees an invitation to grow. Consider two graduates entering a competitive job market. Both possess similar qualifications. Both encounter rejection. The first concludes, there are no opportunities left. The second asks, what skills can I improve that would make me more valuable? The market has not changed. The interpretation has. That difference influences every decision that follows. One gradually withdraws. The other continues adapting. Months later, their lives may look dramatically different, even though they began from nearly the same position. Modern psychology helps explain this process. The brain is constantly filtering information because it cannot consciously process everything at once. It gives greater attention to whatever appears most important based on previous experiences, current goals, and deeply held expectations. Researchers sometimes describe this as selective attention. When your attention is focused on a particular objective, you naturally begin noticing information related to it. Someone preparing to buy a bicycle suddenly notices bicycles everywhere. A student studying architecture begins noticing building designs that previously escaped attention. A person committed to improving their finances starts paying closer attention to spending habits, investment ideas, and opportunities for learning. The opportunities were always there. Attention simply changed. This principle has practical implications. If your mind is constantly searching for evidence that nothing will improve, it becomes easier to overlook possibilities that do not fit that expectation. If your attention is directed toward learning, contribution, and growth, you become more likely to recognize opportunities that previously seemed invisible. Notice the distinction. This is not about pretending every situation contains immediate success. Some situations are genuinely difficult. Some opportunities require patience. Others never develop as hoped. Perception is not about denying reality. It is about refusing to let discouragement become the only lens through which reality is viewed. Another important influence is curiosity. Curiosity transforms obstacles into questions. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Curiosity asks, what can I learn from this? What skill does the situation require? Who has solved a similar problem before? These questions redirect attention away from helplessness and toward discovery. Curiosity expands perception because it encourages exploration instead of conclusion. This is one reason lifelong learners often continue discovering opportunities throughout their lives. They assume there is still something worth learning. They remain open to new perspectives. They continue asking thoughtful questions. That attitude often produces practical advantages over time. An abundance perspective develops in much the same way. Abundance does not mean believing resources are unlimited or that every goal will be achieved exactly as planned. It means refusing to believe that another person's success automatically prevents your own. It recognizes that knowledge can be shared, skills can be developed, ideas can be improved, partnerships can create value that did not previously exist. Innovation often emerges because someone looked beyond the obvious and recognized possibilities hidden inside familiar circumstances. History repeatedly demonstrates this principle. Many important inventions solved ordinary problems people had accepted for generations. Many successful businesses began by improving existing services rather than inventing entirely new industries. Many meaningful careers developed because someone remained attentive to needs others overlooked. Opportunity frequently disguises itself as inconvenience. The ability to recognize it often depends upon perspective. This also explains why preparation matters. Opportunity alone rarely transforms a life. Preparedness allows opportunity to be used well. Someone who studies consistently is ready when a scholarship becomes available. Someone who develops communication skills is prepared when leadership responsibilities arise. Someone who manages money wisely is better positioned when new financial opportunities appear. Preparation and perception work together. One notices possibility. The other makes use of it. It is also helpful to become aware of the stories you tell yourself. Statements such as, "People like me never succeed," "There is nothing left for me," "I miss my chance," may feel convincing after disappointment. Yet they are interpretations, not necessarily permanent truths. Replacing them does not require unrealistic optimism. It requires asking more accurate questions. What opportunities still exist? What abilities can I strengthen? What relationships could I build? What contribution can I make today? These questions encourage movement. Movement often reveals possibilities that stillness cannot. Behavioral science supports this practical approach. People who consistently engage in learning, networking, experimentation, and deliberate practice naturally increase the number of opportunities they encounter, not because the world suddenly changes in their favor, but because they interact with the world differently. Their perception influences their behavior. Their behavior expands their experience. Their experience creates new possibilities. One practical exercise is to spend a week intentionally observing opportunities rather than obstacles. Each evening, write down 3 possibilities you noticed that day. Perhaps you discovered a useful article. Perhaps you met someone knowledgeable. Perhaps you identified a skill worth developing. Perhaps you recognize a recurring problem that could become the basis for a future solution. This simple practice gradually trains attention toward constructive observation. Over time, the mind becomes more practiced at recognizing possibility without ignoring reality. Another valuable habit is spending time with people who encourage thoughtful growth. Perspective is contagious. People who approach challenges with curiosity often influence those around them to do the same. Likewise, constant pessimism can quietly narrow perception until possibility becomes difficult to recognize. Choosing your environment wisely, therefore, becomes part of developing an abundance perspective. Ultimately, opportunity is rarely just something waiting to be found. More often, it is something that becomes visible as perception, preparation, and purposeful action begin working together. You may not control every circumstance. You may not receive every opportunity you hope for, but you can develop the habits of mind that make you more prepared to recognize, evaluate, and act upon the opportunities that do appear. And that may be one of the greatest forms of prosperity, not merely possessing resources, but developing the wisdom to recognize possibility where others see only limitation. In the final chapters, we will bring these ideas together by exploring how lasting transformation begins long before anyone else notices it. We will examine why meaningful success is often built quietly through daily habits, disciplined thinking, and consistent action before it ever becomes visible to the world. Chapter 10. Success starts before anyone sees it. Every meaningful achievement begins in a place the world rarely notices. It begins in ordinary mornings, quiet evenings, repeated practice, thoughtful preparation, and decisions that receive no applause. People often celebrate the visible moment of success. They notice a promotion, the thriving business, the published book, the confident speaker, or the athlete standing on the podium. What they do not see are the countless hours that came before. They do not see the early mornings spent studying while others slept. They do not see the difficult conversations, the failed attempts, the habits built one day at a time, or the moments when continuing required far more determination than talent. This misunderstanding leads many people to believe that success appears suddenly. In reality, visible success is often the final chapter of a much longer invisible story. Long before results become obvious, preparation quietly shapes the person capable of achieving them. This idea appears repeatedly across many fields of human achievement. Scientists spend years conducting experiments before making discoveries. Musicians practice thousands of hours before performing effortlessly on stage. Physicians dedicate years to learning before treating patients independently. Entrepreneurs test ideas repeatedly before building successful companies. The visible outcome is only a small part of the journey. The larger part takes place where very few people are watching. Understanding this truth changes the way we think about progress. When you stop measuring your life only by immediate results, you begin paying greater attention to daily preparation. Instead of asking, "Why haven't I succeeded yet?" you begin asking, "Who am I becoming through today's actions?" That question is powerful because lasting success depends as much on character as it does on opportunity. Preparation develops judgment. Discipline develops consistency. Experience develops wisdom. None of these qualities appear overnight. They grow quietly through repetition. Modern psychology supports this perspective. Researchers studying expertise consistently find that deliberate practice, focused, repeated improvement with thoughtful feedback plays a significant role in developing high levels of performance. Talent matters, but talent without sustained practice rarely reaches its full potential. Preparation, therefore, becomes an investment rather than a delay. Every skill you learn expands your future options. Every book you study strengthens your understanding. Every thoughtful conversation broadens your perspective. Every small promise you keep to yourself strengthens confidence. These actions may appear insignificant in isolation. Together, they gradually transform identity. Another valuable practice is mental rehearsal. Mental rehearsal is not about pretending success has already happened. Rather, it involves thoughtfully preparing your mind for future situations before they arrive. Athletes often visualize executing movements with precision. Public speakers mentally walk through presentations before stepping onto a stage. Professionals prepare for important conversations by considering thoughtful responses in advance. This practice improves familiarity. Familiarity often reduces unnecessary anxiety. Behavioral research suggests that mentally rehearsing challenging situations can increase confidence and improve performance when combined with genuine preparation. Visualization alone is not enough. It works best when paired with learning, practice, and consistent action. This distinction matters. Preparation without action produces little progress. Action without preparation often creates avoidable mistakes. The strongest foundation combines both. Consistency is another lesson hidden beneath every meaningful accomplishment. People naturally admire dramatic breakthroughs. The reality is usually much quieter. A writer completes one page, then another. A runner trains one day, then another. A student studies one chapter, then another. These repeated efforts rarely feel extraordinary while they are happening. Only in hindsight do they reveal their extraordinary cumulative effect. Consistency is powerful because it transforms difficult actions into familiar habits. Habits reduce the need for constant motivation. Instead of waiting to feel inspired, consistent people learn to act according to values and commitments. This is one reason sustainable routines often outperform short bursts of intense enthusiasm. Motivation rises and falls. Habits remain. The challenge, of course, is that consistency rarely receives immediate rewards. The first week of learning a language may feel awkward. The first month of saving money may seem insignificant. The first year of building a business may produce little visible recognition. This delay causes many people quit. They mistake invisible progress for the absence of progress. Yet many important forms of growth remain hidden before becoming visible. Roots develop beneath the soil long before branches appear above it. Strength develops internally before it becomes externally recognizable. Patience, therefore, becomes an essential companion to discipline. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active persistence. It is continuing to prepare even when recognition has not yet arrived. Recognition itself deserves careful consideration. Many people seek recognition because it provides encouragement. There is nothing wrong with appreciating encouragement. The difficulty arises when recognition becomes the primary motivation. External approval changes constantly. Public opinion shifts. Attention moves elsewhere. If your commitment depends entirely upon applause, your progress becomes vulnerable to circumstances beyond your control. A more stable foundation comes from purpose. Purpose continues working even when nobody notices. Purpose studies when grades are still uncertain. Purpose practices before the audience arrives. Purpose prepares before opportunity appears. Ironically, people who become deeply committed to purposeful preparation often receive recognition later. Not because they chase attention, but because sustained excellence eventually became difficult to ignore. This perspective also changes the way setbacks are viewed. A disappointing result no longer becomes evidence that preparation was wasted. Instead, it becomes useful feedback. Feedback refines strategy. Strategy improves future action. Future action creates better outcomes. Every meaningful field values this process. Researchers revise experiments. Engineers improve designs. Teachers refine lessons. Artists edit drafts. Growth depends less upon avoiding mistakes than upon learning wisely from them. One practical habit is to establish daily disciplines that align with your long-term goals. If you want to become healthier, protect time for movement and nutritious meals. If you want to become financially stronger, develop consistent saving and learning habits. If you want to become a better communicator, practice listening, reading, and thoughtful conversation. Each daily action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Another helpful practice is keeping a progress journal. Instead of recording only major achievements, write down small improvements. The difficult conversation you handled more calmly, the chapter you completed, the budget you followed, the new skill you practiced. Looking back over weeks and months reveals something important. Progress often happens quietly. Recognizing that quiet progress builds resilience. Perhaps the greatest lesson of this chapter is that success should not be measured only by what other people can see. The habits no one applauds often produce the results everyone eventually notices. The discipline developed in private supports confidence displayed in public. The learning completed in silence prepares you for opportunities that arrive unexpectedly. The character strengthened during ordinary days enables wise decisions during extraordinary moments. Visible achievement is rarely the beginning of the story. It is usually the consequence of many invisible choices made long beforehand. As this audiobook concludes, one central idea remains. Prosperity is not built through isolated moments of inspiration alone. It grows through thoughtful beliefs, responsible action, continuous learning, patient preparation, and consistent practice. Whether your goal is greater financial stability, stronger relationships, meaningful work, or personal growth, lasting change usually begins where no audience is watching. And perhaps that is the most encouraging truth of all. The most important work you will ever do is often the work no one else can see, because it is there, in the quiet discipline of everyday life, that tomorrow's visible success is patiently being built. Chapter 11. Breaking Generational Patterns. The most powerful beliefs in your life are often the ones you never consciously chose. They were quietly absorbed long before you were old enough to question them. Every family passes something from one generation to the next. Sometimes it is wisdom. Sometimes it is resilience. Sometimes it is kindness, discipline, or faith. But families can also pass along fear, limiting assumptions, unhealthy financial habits, and deeply rooted expectations about what is or is not possible. These invisible inheritances often influence life just as strongly as the visible ones. Many people assume they make decisions independently. In reality, much of what feels like personal preference has been shaped by years of observation. Children learn not only from what they are told, but from what they repeatedly witness. If a child grows up hearing that money always causes conflict, they may unconsciously associate financial success with anxiety. If they constantly observe fear surrounding bills, debt, or scarcity, those emotions can quietly become part of their own relationship with money. The same pattern extends far beyond finances. Some people inherit confidence. Others inherit caution. Some inherit curiosity. Others inherit the belief that it is safer not to dream too boldly. None of these patterns make a person's future inevitable. They simply become the starting point. Recognizing this truth is not about blaming parents or previous generations. Every family is shaped by its own history. Economic hardship, social circumstances, cultural traditions, and personal experiences influence the lessons adults pass to children. Most parents teach what they sincerely believe will help their children survive and succeed. Sometimes those lessons remain valuable throughout life. Sometimes they need thoughtful revision. Growth begins when inherited beliefs become examined beliefs. Instead of automatically repeating every assumption, we begin asking, where did this belief come from? Does it still serve me today? Is it supported by evidence? Or is it simply familiar? These questions require courage because familiar beliefs often feel true simply because they have been repeated for many years. Modern psychology describes this process through concepts such as schemas and learned behavior. Early experiences help create mental frameworks that shape how people interpret new situations. These frameworks influence expectations, emotional responses, and decision-making. The encouraging news is that the brain remains capable of learning throughout life. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt through experience, suggests that repeated thoughts and behaviors can gradually strengthen healthier patterns. This does not make change effortless, but it does make meaningful change possible. One of the most common inherited beliefs concerns scarcity. Some people grow up believing there is never enough, not enough money, not enough opportunity, not enough success to go around. When scarcity becomes deeply rooted, it influences everyday choices. People may hesitate to invest in education because they assume it will not matter. They may avoid asking for fair compensation because they fear losing what little they already have. They may compare themselves constantly because they believe another person's progress somehow reduces their own. These habits rarely develop overnight. They emerge gradually from repeated messages and repeated experiences. Replacing them requires more than positive thinking. It requires evidence created through new action. Suppose someone believes they are bad with money. Instead of accepting that identity permanently, they begin learning basic financial skills. They create a simple budget. They save a small amount consistently. They read one book about personal finance. Each action provides evidence that a different future is possible. Over time, the identity begins changing. The belief no longer rests only on hope. It is reinforced by experience. This principle applies equally to confidence, relationships, leadership, and learning. People often become what they repeatedly practice. That is why daily habits matter so much. Every thoughtful decision quietly strengthens a new pattern. Every repeated action teaches the mind something about who you are becoming. Another important step is recognizing that honoring your family does not require repeating every habit they practiced. You can appreciate the sacrifices previous generations made while also choosing healthier ways of thinking where necessary. Respect and growth can exist together. You are not rejecting your past by learning from it. You are building upon it. One practical exercise is to write down several beliefs you remember hearing while growing up. Money doesn't grow on trees. People like us don't become leaders. Success belongs to other people. Or perhaps education opens doors. Hard work matters. Treat people with respect. After writing them down, ask which beliefs continue to help you and which deserve thoughtful reconsideration. This simple exercise often reveals how deeply early messages continue influencing present decisions. It also creates an opportunity to choose intentionally rather than automatically. Choosing new mental patterns requires patience. Old habits of thought rarely disappear in a single moment. They return during stress. They reappear after disappointment. That does not mean progress has failed. It simply means new pathways are still becoming stronger. Each time you respond differently, you reinforce a healthier direction. Another helpful practice is surrounding yourself with environments that support growth. Books, mentors, thoughtful conversations, and communities committed to learning all contribute to reshaping perspective. The people we regularly listen to influence the stories we tell ourselves. Choosing those influences wisely becomes part of building a healthier future. Ultimately, breaking generational patterns is not about becoming someone entirely different. It is about becoming more intentional. You keep what is wise. You question what is limiting. You strengthen what serves your values. You replace what no longer reflects the person you hope to become. In doing so, you create something valuable not only for yourself, but also for those who may learn from you in the future. Every generation leaves an inheritance. Some inheritances are financial. Others are emotional. Others are intellectual. Perhaps the greatest legacy anyone can leave is a healthier way of thinking, one that encourages responsibility, curiosity, resilience, generosity, and hope. The patterns you choose today may become the starting point for someone else's tomorrow. In the next chapter, we will explore another dimension of lasting prosperity, emotional wealth. We will examine why inner peace, Emotional maturity and resilience often become the foundation that allows every other form of success to endure. Chapter 12. Mastering Emotional Wealth. The richest person in the room is not always the one with the largest bank account. Sometimes it is the person whose peace cannot be purchased, whose confidence cannot be taken away, and whose emotional stability remains intact even when life becomes uncertain. Modern culture often measures success by visible achievements: bigger homes, higher salaries, prestigious titles, public recognition. These accomplishments can certainly improve quality of life, and there is nothing inherently wrong with pursuing them through honest effort. Yet, history repeatedly reminds us that external success does not automatically produce inner peace. Many people have achieved impressive financial success while quietly struggling with anxiety, loneliness, exhaustion, or a constant fear of losing everything they worked so hard to build. Others have lived with modest means while displaying remarkable contentment, resilience, generosity, and purpose. This contrast teaches an important lesson. Prosperity has an emotional dimension that cannot be measured by possessions alone. Emotional wealth begins with the understanding that your value as a person is greater than your circumstances. Careers change, markets fluctuate, relationships evolve, health sometimes improves and sometimes declines. Seasons of life come and go. If your entire identity depends upon external conditions remaining perfect, peace becomes fragile. A stronger foundation comes from developing qualities that remain valuable regardless of changing circumstances: integrity, wisdom, compassion, patience, courage. These qualities continue serving you whether life is moving quickly or slowly. One of the greatest misunderstandings about confidence is the belief that confident people never experience fear. In reality, confidence and fear often exist together. Confidence is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the willingness to continue acting according to your values despite uncertainty. Think about a surgeon performing a complex procedure, a pilot navigating difficult weather, a teacher standing before a classroom, a student presenting research for the first time. None of these people necessarily feel completely free from nervousness. Their confidence grows because preparation, experience, and repeated practice gradually become stronger than fear. This understanding changes the way we think about emotional strength. Emotional resilience does not mean suppressing emotions. It does not require pretending disappointment never hurts, nor does it encourage ignoring grief, frustration, or loss. Healthy resilience acknowledges emotion while refusing to become permanently defined by it. You may feel discouraged. That does not mean discouragement must decide your future. You may experience failure. That does not make failure your identity. You may encounter criticism. That does not determine your worth. Modern psychology describes resilience as the ability to adapt constructively after difficulty. People with strong resilience are not protected from hardship. Instead, they develop habits that help them recover, learn, and continue moving forward. Several of these habits can be strengthened intentionally. The first is emotional awareness. Many people react automatically without first recognizing what they're experiencing. A difficult email arrives. A conversation goes poorly. An unexpected expense appears. Within moments, the mind begins creating interpretations. I always get bad news. Nothing ever works. I'll never recover. These thoughts often appear so quickly that they feel like facts. Pause and create space. Instead of immediately believing every thought, ask, what emotion am I experiencing right now? What evidence supports this conclusion? What response will my wiser self choose? These questions slow emotional momentum and encourage thoughtful action. Another important practice is separating events from identity. Losing a job is an event. It is not your identity. Receiving criticism is an event. It is not your identity. Making a mistake is an event. It is not your identity. This distinction protects emotional well-being because it reminds us that circumstances describe experiences, not permanent personal value. Another dimension of emotional wealth is gratitude. Gratitude does not deny pain. Rather, it prevents pain from becoming an entire story. During difficult seasons, gratitude gently reminds us that life often contains multiple truths at once. A person may face financial pressure while also enjoying meaningful friendships. Someone recovering from illness may simultaneously appreciate supportive family members. A demanding project may also provide valuable opportunities for learning. Recognizing these realities broadens perspective. Research in positive psychology suggests that regular gratitude practices can improve emotional well-being for many people. Gratitude is not presented as a solution to every challenge, but often helps people maintain balance during stressful periods. Emotional wealth also depends upon healthy boundaries. Not every opinion deserves equal influence. Constructive feedback can help us improve. Constant comparison rarely does. Today's world offers endless opportunities to compare our lives with carefully edited images of someone else's success. This habit often produces dissatisfaction instead of inspiration. A healthier comparison asks, am I becoming wiser than I was last year? Am I responding more patiently than I once did? Am I learning from my mistakes? Am I treating others with greater kindness? These questions encourage growth without creating unnecessary competition. Relationships also contribute significantly to emotional prosperity. Supportive friendships, encouraging mentors, loving family members, and trustworthy colleagues provide strength during challenging seasons. Emotional wealth grows more easily in environments where honesty, encouragement, and mutual respect are present. For this reason, choosing your environment wisely is an act of emotional stewardship. The books you read, the conversations you engage in, the media you consume, the people you spend time with, each quietly influences your emotional landscape. You cannot control every influence. You can intentionally choose many of them. Forgiveness is another often overlooked aspect of emotional wealth. Holding resentment may feel like protection. More often it becomes emotional weight. Forgiveness does not excuse harmful behavior. It does not remove appropriate accountability. Instead, it allows you to stop carrying yesterday's injury into tomorrow's decisions. In many cases, forgiveness becomes a gift you give yourself. It creates room for healing where bitterness once occupied attention. One practical habit for building emotional resilience is creating a daily reflection practice. Spend a few quiet minutes asking yourself, what challenged me today? How did I respond? What did I learn? What am I grateful for? What is one constructive action I can take tomorrow? Simple questions like these strengthen self-awareness over time. Another valuable habit is protecting physical well-being. Adequate sleep, regular movement, nutritious food, and meaningful rest all influence emotional health more than many people realize. The mind and body work together. Caring for one often strengthens the other. Perhaps the greatest measure of emotional wealth is this. Can you remain grounded when life becomes unpredictable? Can you celebrate another person's success without feeling diminished? Can you accept constructive criticism without believing you have lost your worth? Can you continue acting according to your values when immediate rewards are absent? These abilities develop gradually. They are built through repeated choices. One calm response, one thoughtful decision, one act of patience, one moment of courage. Repeated often enough, these small actions shape character. And character becomes one of the greatest forms of prosperity a person can possess. As we approach the final chapter of this journey, we will bring these ideas together by exploring the daily disciplines that transform philosophy into practice. Lasting prosperity is not created through occasional inspiration alone. It grows through the ordinary habits, intentional choices, and consistent actions that quietly shape a meaningful life over time. Chapter 13. The Daily Discipline of Prosperity. A meaningful life is rarely transformed by one extraordinary moment. More often, it is quietly shaped by ordinary decisions repeated long enough to become character. People naturally admire dramatic breakthroughs. They celebrate the day someone launches a successful company, publishes a book, earns a degree, or achieves financial independence. Yet those visible milestones usually rest upon thousands of invisible choices that came before them. One thoughtful morning, one disciplined afternoon, one difficult conversation handled with patience, one chapter read instead of another hour spent distracted. Prosperity, in its fullest sense, grows in much the same way. It develops through habits that gradually shape the way we think, act, and respond to life. This is why daily discipline matters. Discipline is often misunderstood as punishment or restriction. In reality, healthy discipline creates freedom. It allows us to act according to long-term values instead of short-term impulses. Rather than waiting for motivation to appear, disciplined people build routines that help them continue moving even when enthusiasm naturally rises and falls. One of the most valuable places to begin is the morning. The first moments of the day often influence the emotional tone of everything that follows. Waking up and immediately reacting to messages, headlines, and social media can place the mind into a constant state of reaction before personal priorities have even been considered. A more intentional beginning creates a different foundation. Many people find value in taking a few quiet moments to reflect before the demands of the day begin. This might include reading something meaningful, reviewing personal goals, practicing gratitude, planning important tasks, taking a short walk, or simply sitting in silence long enough to begin the day with clarity instead of urgency. There is no single perfect routine. The important principle is beginning the day by choosing your direction rather than allowing every outside influence to choose it for you. This leads to another essential practice, protecting your attention. Attention is one of your most valuable resources because it determines where your mental energy is invested. Every notification, every unnecessary argument, every endless comparison, every hour spent consuming information without reflection, all of these quietly shape the condition of the mind. Modern psychology increasingly recognizes that attention is limited. When it is constantly divided, thoughtful decision-making becomes more difficult. Concentration weakens. Stress increases. Important priorities become buried beneath immediate distractions. Protecting attention does not require withdrawing from the world. It requires choosing intentionally what deserves consistent access to your mind. Ask yourself, does this information help me grow? Does this conversation strengthen wisdom or simply increase frustration? Does this habit move me toward the person I hope to become? These questions gradually improve the quality of daily decisions. Another important discipline is continuous learning. One of the greatest advantages any person can develop is the willingness to remain teachable. The world changes continually. Technology advances. Industries evolve. New discoveries reshape old assumptions. The individuals who continue learning are often better prepared to adapt than those who assume they already know enough. Learning extends far beyond formal education. Books, conversations, experience, mentorship, observation, reflection. Every day offers opportunities to expand understanding. Curiosity keeps the mind flexible. Humility keeps it open. Together they encourage lifelong growth. Learning alone, however, is incomplete without application. Knowledge becomes valuable when it influences action. Reading about financial responsibility matters. Creating a realistic budget matters more. Studying communication is helpful. Practicing attentive listening creates transformation. Understanding healthy habits is useful. Living them consistently changes a life. This is why small daily actions deserve more respect than occasional dramatic efforts. 5 thoughtful minutes repeated every day often accomplish more than one intense day, followed by weeks of inactivity. Behavioral science supports this principle. Habits strengthen through repetition. Each repeated behavior gradually becomes easier because the brain becomes more familiar with it. Consistency reduces the need to rely entirely upon motivation. Another discipline worth developing is intentional reflection. Without reflection, experiences pass by without becoming wisdom. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what did I learn today? What challenged me? How did I respond? What am I grateful for? What could I improve tomorrow? These questions encourage growth without harsh self-criticism. They transform ordinary experience into ongoing education. Relationships also deserve intentional attention. Meaningful prosperity includes the quality of the people with whom you share your life. Encouraging friendships, wise mentors, honest conversations, acts of kindness. These experiences enrich life in ways possessions alone never can. Investing time in healthy relationships is therefore not a distraction from success. It is part of success. Equally important is protecting time for rest. Many people confuse constant activity with productivity, yet exhausted minds often make poor decisions and rested ones. Rest is not the opposite of meaningful work. It is part of sustainable work. Periods of recovery improve creativity, emotional regulation, and long-term performance. Caring for your physical health also strengthens every other area of life. Nutritious food, regular movement, adequate sleep, time outdoors. These practices influence mood, concentration, resilience, and decision-making more than many people realize. The mind and body function together. Supporting one often strengthens the other. Living intentionally also means remembering that every choice quietly reinforces identity. When you keep promises to yourself, self-trust grows. When you repeatedly act according to your values, confidence becomes steadier. When you respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively, character deepens. Identity is built one decision at a time. This understanding removes unnecessary pressure. You do not need to transform your life overnight. You simply need to continue making decisions that align with the future you hope to build. Some days progress will feel obvious. Other days it will feel invisible. Invisible progress is still progress. The tree continues growing long before anyone notices its height. Skills continue developing before others recognize expertise. Character continues strengthening before circumstances reveal its value. Patience, therefore, becomes one of the greatest companions of discipline, not passive waiting, but steady commitment. As this journey comes to a close, one central lesson remains. Prosperity is not merely something to possess. It is something to practice. It is reflected in the way you think, the way you learn, the way you respond to difficulty, the way you treat other people, the way you use your time, the way you care for your mind, and the way you choose your direction each day. Extraordinary lives are usually built through ordinary disciplines practiced with extraordinary consistency. Tomorrow's opportunities are shaped by today's habits. Tomorrow's confidence is strengthened by today's preparation. Tomorrow's wisdom begins with today's willingness to learn. And tomorrow's prosperity quietly begins with the choices you make today. Conclusion: the greatest investment is the one you make in your mind. Every lasting transformation begins long before the world notices it. It begins with a thought that refuses to remain a limitation, a belief that is questioned instead of automatically accepted, a decision to become more intentional than yesterday. Throughout this journey, one idea is quietly connected every chapter. The quality of a person's life is influenced not only by circumstances, but also by the way those circumstances are understood, interpreted, and responded to. This does not mean that life is always fair. It does not suggest that every hardship can be eliminated through positive thinking, nor does it promise that disciplined thinking guarantees wealth or protects anyone from disappointment. Life remains unpredictable. People experience loss. Unexpected obstacles appear. Economic conditions change. Health can fluctuate. Relationships sometimes end. These realities deserve honesty, compassion, and practical action. Yet within those realities, another truth continues to emerge. The human mind possesses an extraordinary capacity to learn, adapt, and grow. That capacity may be one of the greatest forms of wealth available to every person. A recurring theme throughout this book has been that beliefs influence behavior. Behavior shapes habits. Habits gradually shape character. Character influences the direction of a life. When viewed this way, prosperity becomes much larger than financial achievement alone. Prosperity includes wisdom. It includes emotional stability. It includes meaningful relationships. It includes purposeful work. It includes integrity. It includes generosity. It includes the ability to continue growing throughout every season of life. Financial resources can certainly expand opportunities, but opportunities are used most wisely when guided by a well-developed mind and a well-formed character. Perhaps that is why investing in yourself remains one of the few investments that can continue producing value throughout an entire lifetime. Every useful skill you learn, every healthy habit you develop, every thoughtful conversation you have, every meaningful book you read, every moment spent strengthening your judgment, these investments quietly compound over time. Unlike possessions, they cannot easily be taken away. Knowledge influences future decisions. Wisdom improves future relationships. Discipline strengthens future opportunities. Character supports future success. The returns often extend far beyond what can be measured financially. Another lesson repeated throughout these chapters is that awareness always comes before change. You cannot replace a belief you refuse to examine. You cannot improve a habit you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot strengthen an area of life that remains outside conscious attention. Fortunately, awareness is available today, not someday, not after circumstances become perfect. Today. The questions explored throughout this audiobook remain valuable long after the final chapter ends. What assumptions quietly guide my decisions? What stories have I accepted without examining them? What habits move me toward the person I hope to become? Which habits move me away from that future? These questions are not invitations to harsh self-judgment. They are invitations to thoughtful growth. Growth itself rarely arrives dramatically. It usually appears through small choices repeated consistently. One healthier decision, one honest conversation, one chapter read, 1 hour invested in learning, one unnecessary distraction removed, one act of courage, one moment of patience, one thoughtful response instead of an impulsive reaction. Each choice may appear insignificant. Together they shape a life. This understanding also encourages patience. Many people abandon meaningful goals because progress remains invisible longer than expected. Seeds grow beneath the soil before leaves appear. Skills improve before confidence catches up. Character develops long before recognition arrives. Invisible progress remains genuine progress. Trusting this process allows persistence to replace frustration. As the chapters have shown, the mind is influenced by what it repeatedly practices. Attention can be directed. Habits can be strengthened. Perspectives can be broadened. Old assumptions can be questioned. New patterns can be developed. Modern psychology supports many aspects of this practical reality. Human beings continue learning throughout life. Habits can change. Emotional resilience can grow. Skills improve through deliberate practice. While no single philosophy explains every aspect of human flourishing, there is strong evidence that intentional thought, purposeful action, and lifelong learning meaningfully influence well-being and performance. This perspective encourages balance. Hope joined with responsibility. Optimism joined with preparation. Confidence joined with humility. Vision joined with action. One without the other often becomes incomplete. Dreams require discipline. Knowledge requires application. Success requires stewardship. And prosperity requires continual growth. As you leave this audiobook, resist the temptation to measure its value only by how inspired you feel today. Inspiration is valuable. Application changes lives. Choose one principle that resonated with you. Practice it consistently. Observe its effect. Then choose another. Real transformation rarely depends upon consuming more information. It depends upon living more intentionally. Continue reading. Continue asking thoughtful questions. Continue developing useful skills. Continue strengthening your relationships. Continue caring for your physical and emotional well-being. Continue becoming the kind of person whose character supports lasting success. Prosperity is not a finish line. It is an ongoing practice. It grows through curiosity instead of certainty, through responsibility instead of excuses, through gratitude instead of resentment, through generosity instead of fear, through disciplined action instead of endless wishing. Most importantly, remember that your greatest asset travels with you every day. Your mind. It shapes how you interpret setbacks. It influences the opportunities you recognize. It guides the habits you build. It determines how you respond when life becomes uncertain. Investing in that mind through learning, reflection, discipline, and purposeful action may become one of the wisest decisions you ever make. Long after material possessions have changed, long after seasons of success and difficulty have come and gone, the person you have become remains. And in the end, that may be the greatest form of prosperity of all.